You that have, this is your first time on the call, welcome. You are in listen-only mode, and I keep everybody muted because of the fact that we get a lot of background noises, and as we all well know, people like to come in and talk to us while we're on the phone, even though we wave them off. But so everybody's muted. There is a question and answer box over there. I'm going to try to keep my eyes open to make sure that I see any questions that come up. If I don't answer your question on the call, feel free to call me afterwards, and I'll do my best to get an answer for you. So welcome, everyone. One other housekeeping situation that I wanted to chat with you about just very, very briefly. We've had a couple clients take advantage of the third-party program Avatax by Avalara. It is a program that integrates with your accounts receivable and sales order system to basically properly tax your invoices correctly. They also do, the exemption certificates, et cetera, et cetera. The only reason why I'm mentioning it, normally I don't mention stuff like this, but the gentleman from Avalara is coming into town at the end of this month, and if anybody would like to meet with him, I can set up a meeting so you can have a demo or whatever. If you are interested, let me know. Otherwise, let's get started. We're going to talk about accounts payable and 1099 processing. I obviously picked the right topic this morning because we had a lot of people sign up for this course. Keep in mind, all of our courses, all of our Tech Tuesdays are out on our website. Usually it takes us a couple days to get it out there, but they will be out on our website that you can view at a later time. If you have to miss, feel free to go out there or feel free to share them with your workmates, and so everybody can get the benefit of the education. Also, the documentation I will send out usually within 24 hours, and once again, we put that out on the website too, so if you were one that didn't get the documentation, go ahead and pull it down from the website. Big secret, though, is that if you do go ahead and register for the class, whether or not you can attend, I send you the documentation anyway, as long as you're registered, because I know meetings and emergencies come out, and sometimes we're not able to attend at the last minute. So let's start talking about 1099s. We're going to do this. We're going to start from the very basics with 1099s. First of all, your Sage software product will handle 3 separate types of 1099s. Miscellaneous, interest, and dividend. Now, the majority of us are doing miscellaneous 1099s, which is great, but just so you know, it does handle the other 2. And this year we've got some changes because Sage has stopped, so to speak, supporting the forms. Meaning, at the end of the year when I always send you guys out that year-end IRD, interim release disk, that has any changes in the 1099s. That usually is installed, and if maybe the form has changed a little bit and positions have moved, this programming handles that. Well, starting this year, they have partnered, and actually this has been going on for several years, but they're forcing it now. They've partnered with an external company called Atrix, and Atrix is not only going to be helping us print the W-2s this year, it'll also be used to print the 1099s. One thing that is a bad thing, well, not bad, we'll just call it a downer, for those of you that have over 250 1099s, if you had the electronic reporting module, Sage actually retired that product last year. Now, I know it's upsetting. It upset me. It's something that you purchased, but they have made the decision to no longer support that product because you can actually e-file your 1099s through the Atrix. Unfortunately, that is a paid service. So, we'll talk about that. If it's a huge burden on you too, I suggest that, give Sage a call, let them know how you feel. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it too, and talk to them on your behalf also if it's something that's a huge burden. Not something we can change, but at least you've got a voice, right? So anyway, back to the 1099s. First of all, make sure that you have it set up. So if we go into accounts payable options, What we want to do is make sure that the 1099 reporting is turned on, and then you have a default calendar year. Now, my data is old. This is all test data, and it is from 2010. So I'm going to leave mine in 2010, but normally this year it would be 2014 for you. The other thing that I suggest that you do is on your History tab, you have number of years to retain 1099 payment history. I highly suggest it minimum 7. I like to have, at least 7 years, and quite often now I'm recommending 10 years. Okay, so at least make sure you have those two turned on. Usually, when I start with a client, regardless of whether they do 1099s or not, I go ahead and turn it on, so we know that that feature is out there. But if you don't have it turned on, don't worry. We can account for those 1099s, even though we're near at the end of the year and the system hasn't been tracking it all year long. Not a problem. So that is step 1. Your step 2 is to go to Accounts Payable Main and go to Vendor Maintenance. Now, in your vendors here, what you're going to want to do is you go, select your vendor and you go to the Additional tab. Now, if the vendor has never been set up as a 1099 vendor before, you're going to notice that this says None. So the first thing that you have to do is determine, is this vendor a business or is it an individual? Are they going to give you a federal ID number, or are they going to give you a Social Security number? Okay, so our guy is a business. What type of 1099 are we doing or tracking for this? What is the default form? Miscellaneous, interest, or dividend? Now, keep in mind, just because I choose miscellaneous here doesn't mean that this is the only type of 1099 I can track for this vendor. This is just the default form. So I can actually do dividends and miscellaneous, or interest and miscellaneous for a vendor. Or I could do all 3, but just keep that in mind. Okay, so, and actually I think I'm going to go ahead and make him an individual. And I'm just going to make up a Social Security number here for this person. Now, number 1 mistake people make is right here, this box. Bing, 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 alarms go off. Because what happens is that quite often, those of us who are doing 1099s, we don't really know. I mean, you may have somebody who doesn't really know very much about 1099s, and they don't realize that they should change this default box. Because box 1, I believe, for a miscellaneous is rent. And, you're not really tracking rent. You're tracking miscellaneous income for these folks. So you really want to change that to box 7. That is the biggest reconciling factor that we have at the end of the year. We go in, we find out, oh my goodness, these were defaulted to box 1, and we have all this year-to-date data sitting in box 1 now instead of box 7, and we have to fix it. Not a problem, easily fixed. Don't worry, we can correct it. Okay. So what happens now, once that we have this set up on our vendor, we'll go ahead and click on Accept. This means that this vendor, when I put an invoice in it, the invoice is going to default as a 1099 invoice. So let's talk about that, and let's see how that works. So we're going to go into Invoice Data Entry, and we're going to use this vendor that we just made a 1099 vendor, and I'm going to put an invoice number in for them. And here we're going to do, $300. But what I want you to notice is right here, Form 1099 Miscellaneous Box 7. So this is telling the system that this invoice is subject to being a 1099 invoice, and we want it to end up posting in history. Now, very important that you understand, 1099s are issued to your vendors based on amount paid year-to-date, not what is necessarily put into the system as an invoice. It's the amount paid. So if we're at the end of the year and we're putting invoices in, but they're not going to be paid until the following year, those invoices will go on the next year's 1099s because they were paid in a future year. So just one thing I wanted to mention there. So you go ahead and you fill this, the remainder, you put your GL account in, fill this out. The other item that I wanted to mention to you, and I've had this question quite often, well, what if I have an invoice, so part of it goes for 1099 and part of it goes just, it's a regular invoice? Guess what? sorry, but you got to split that invoice up. So you'll put in actually 2 separate invoices. One will be a 1099 and the other one will not. So how do you handle that? When you put in the secondary invoice, you come in here and you say none. And then that will take that off of that invoice so you know that you don't, that's not subject to 1099, okay? So once again, we have distributed our amount. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to print my invoice register. And I do believe I got paperless turned on, so let's see what pops up on our screen here. All righty, so here is our invoice register, and you will see on the register itself, you can see the 1099 information is noted for that invoice. I just wanted to show that to you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and update that register, and we're going to do our daily transaction register. Everything looks normal, nothing different. This is atypical posting stuff for you. So your entry person doesn't really have to do anything different other than pay attention to the 1099 information that they're putting in there. So now if I go into my vendor maintenance, I just wanted to show you, because we were talking about it being the amount paid, I'm going to go into the additional, and I'm going to go into the 1099 history button here. Now I'm going to change my year to 2014, and those of you, you know that I'll whine at you if you're that far behind on closing your periods. But here, again, you see nothing, right? Because it's based on the amount paid. But we know that our invoice has been posted to this vendor, but it has not yet been paid. So let's see what happens when we pay this invoice. And I'm just going to put in a regular manual check for it. I'm going to pretend like I hand wrote this check to this vendor. And it probably would help if I did it for the full amount. Oh, look, I'm either shorting them or overpaying them, one or the other. And let's go ahead and choose our vendor here. And we're going to go to our lines. And for those of you that don't know this, will happen in, pretty much throughout the system, whether you're in, check maintenance or in here. You've got two different icons here. This lookup here shows you every invoice that the vendor has, even if it's a 0 amount. This one is my favorite one, though, the one with the bar through it. It's your select invoices, and it shows you the ones that are just ready to be paid. So we're going to go ahead and select that, and I'm going to say OK. And we're going to go and accept. I'm going to print my manual register. We're going to go ahead and hit print. And most often, a lot of you guys don't really do a lot of manual checks, but the feature is there if you handwrite checks for any reason. But once again, here's my manual check register. This is my check number. This is the invoice I paid on here. And notice, too, it still here shows you that this was a 1099 invoice that I paid. So I'm going to go ahead and update my register, print my daily transaction register. Nothing's different. Nothing's crazy. You don't have to remember anything wild. But there it is, my daily transaction register. Now let's go ahead and look at that vendor again. So now when I come in and I look at this vendor, and I go to my additional and my history, and there's my $300 that I paid to that vendor. Okay. Now, that's how the information gets in there. Set up the vendor, put it on the invoices, pay the invoices, gets into my history file here. Okay? So, how do I go about starting to reconcile 1099s? We're getting to that point in the year. So how do I go about reconciling them? Well, one of the things that I would recommend is, do you have your vendors set up to begin with? So the first thing that you might want to do is to create yourself a list of your vendors and who has 1099 payments on there set up for them, okay? So how do I do that? A lot of us know to use the Lookup Wizard. We love the Lookup Wizard. It is a great way of getting information out of our system without having to write a report. So we click on the magnifying glass. I may have done, no, I haven't done one in here yet. Great. So we click the magnifying glass, and I click the custom button. Okay? So I'm going to call this 1099 vendors, and I don't want to make it my default. Right now I still want standard to be my default. So I'm going to hit next. Then what you do is you remove the fields that you don't need. So these are the selected fields over here on the right and the available fields over here on the left. So I'm going to click my sort field, and I'm going to single arrow over to the left here. If you double arrow, it removes everything. But we're going to single arrow and take off the fields that I don't need. I'm going to go ahead and leave the status, the vendor number, and the vendor name. And now I'm going to scroll down until I can find my 1099 information. Let's see, what do I want? Well, first of all, I do want a vendor type, okay, because it's going to tell me if it's a business or individual. And I've got my form code here and their ID and their box number. And you may want this miscellaneous box 9 also. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit my finish button. Now I could do next, and I could, I could say, well, if it's not a 1099 vendor, I don't want it. But I want everybody, because I want to be able to produce this list to show someone to say, okay, these are the guys that are set up as 1099 vendors, but should these other people have been also? So what I do now is I come down here to my view, click the down arrow, and I'm going to choose my 1099 vendors. And what you're going to see here is my list. This is all the vendors, and then their boxes and their associated federal ID numbers or Social Security numbers. I can sort them, put my businesses on top, then my individuals, and these are all set to none. So I may want to either print this list by clicking on the print button, or maybe I want to shoot this one out to Excel by clicking the Excel button. But I want someone to review my list and make sure that this is accurate and that my vendors are set up properly, because we're getting to that time of year. So I also may want to use this list to check their tax ID numbers. We have actually had a couple clients. We've used the Custom Office module to create a checkbox in vendor maintenance to say, W-9 on file, yes or no. So that also can help you determine whether or not this guy should be a 1099 vendor or not. So you think about using Custom Office, okay? Now, that's one tool. Now let's look at another tool. My favorite report is the payment history report. And there's some really cool things that you can do with the payment history report. For one, I use this to look to see if my, what I have in my history file matches what my payment history says. This is also a great tool if you started mid-year, or if you had somebody that, oh, I didn't mark them as a 1099 vendor, or I got them marked now, but I should have marked them all year, and oh my gosh, how much should I pay them, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what you can do in here is you can come in and you can say, well, I want to sort this by vendor number. I want to also not include my credit card vendors. I want to include my 1099 vendors only, the ones I have already marked, and I want all my periods. And I came close, but didn't quite make it there. It's period 12. So that gets me my whole year. Let's pretend we're in 2014. If I want to use this every year, I don't want to have to remember, what did I click last year? So I'm going to save it. So I'm going to do Save As, and I'm going to call this 1099 vendors. Now, once again, I don't want to make that my default report. I just want a report out there that I can use. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So anytime I come in here, that's going to be on my list of reports that I can use. And keep in mind, you can do this with any report. Make your changes on this screen and do your Save As, and then that way you can use that report again and again and again and not have to remember what criteria that you clicked previously. So I'm going to go ahead and preview this so we can see what we have out there. And here it is. Here is my payment history report by vendor, and these are my vendor totals. So now I can use this report to go back to my vendor maintenance and look at my 1099 history and see, does that match? The other thing about that is that you can also do 1099s. You can print your 1099s out to white paper and use this report to validate your 1099s. Okay, so keep that in mind. But love this report. It's a really good one, good tool to use. So now I could go back, like I said, I can go back to my vendor maintenance, pull up the vendor, go here, go to my history. Does it match? And then I can make it match if it doesn't. Okay? Now, that's prep work. That's something we should start doing now because year end is approaching very quickly and we have holidays and everything in between and we get very far behind really fast. So, and I know that there's been confusion when it comes to doing our forms and what forms do we want to purchase, and things are different this year. The real different ones actually come in more for the W-2s than the 1099s, although these do a 4-up 1099s, and a lot of you are like, ooh, 4-up, what does that mean? Okay, so let's talk about, we've got our vendors all marked now. We've checked their totals. We got everything in the correct box, and now we're ready to print our 1099s. So this year what we're going to do is we're going to come into this Form 1099 e-filing and reporting. And a lot of people get a little nervous when they come into here because they're like, I'm not e-filing. It's like, it's okay. We're doing the end reporting part, okay? So just keep that in mind. You do not have to e-file, although there may be some benefit in doing that. So let's come and we're going to click on this menu here. When you first come in here, it's going to default to new, and then you choose the form type. So make sure that you do that. That's probably the second highest question that I get. The phone call comes in. It says, hey, I know I got 1099 stuff out here, but nothing is printing. So what do I do? Okay. Well, you came in and you accidentally forgot to change it to miscellaneous. And once we click miscellaneous, bada bing, there it is. Now, you also will come in here and do the 600. Okay, now I know I don't have a lot of test data in the most current year, so I'm going to leave mine to 0, but your minimum still is 600. And then make sure that you choose the correct calendar year. Keep in mind, I said I wanted 7 years of history, so I should be able to get 7 years of history on here. The first time you come in here, you may have to click the Activate button, and the system will automatically prompt for you to update forms. Now, I'm going to go ahead and click on Accept. I'm going to cross my fingers and hopefully we won't have a automatic update today, but let's take a look and see what happens. Oh, look, this is the exact prompt that I was talking about. So what I would normally recommend is you go ahead and click on Automatic Update, and what that does is if there's any new form updates, Atrix is going to put those form updates out there for us, so we're always working on the latest and greatest. Now today, I'm going to continue with the expired, quote, expired forms. I know that they're not expired, but I'm going to go ahead and continue on. Now, right now, the 2014 form is not out there yet, which is why I'm getting this message. So it's telling me, hey, you're trying to do 2014, but we only have a 2013 form. I'm like, I don't care. We're playing, so it doesn't matter. So the next screen that comes up is, our setup wizard. If you were get ready to go live, you would just go ahead and click on this No Thanks, Start Processing My 1099s. Normally, what I have people do is do a test drive. Do a test drive with all of them, okay? Today, I'm going to pretend like we're live. So we're going to go right through here, and we're going to say Next. So it verifies the payer, your federal ID, and then here's your contact information. So you may want to add a contact name, maybe a title, verify your address is correct, all that kind of good stuff. So I'm going to say Next here. Now, what type of filer are you? Well, I am filing for my company or my employer, okay? So we're going to click Next here. Most often, you won't have this information unless you're doing the type of 1099s that you're doing withholding for. With miscellaneous, the majority of us are not doing any withholdings on miscellaneous, so we're going to say Next here. Do I have any recipients who have elected to receive their 1099s electronically? Right now, I think the majority of us, everybody is no. That's still kind of new for most people. And I personally don't like to truncate, on my 1099s yet. So we're going to say no, we're not going to truncate anything. Now, it's saying here, okay, am I using, my ID, my federal ID, to do multiple 1099s for, multiple companies? This is not your vendors. This is you as a company. Probably 99.9999% of the time, it's no. I am a single 1099 filer for this EIN, okay? So you don't have to change anything there. So what it does here is now it brings up this screen. And this is where you're going to start checking. The first thing it wants you to do, and we've already done this, right, because we've done our reconciliation work, it wants you to check those federal ID numbers. Are they correct? Well, yeah, they are. So now I'm going to hit my next step. So if it is a company and it's a federal ID, there should be a little checkbox in here. That's what this is saying. Hey, make sure that all your little checkboxes are marked. Then you hit next. Next, it's saying, okay, verify your vendors' addresses. So we can come in here and we can actually verify their address to make sure it's correct. I will also tell you if the system finds any issue with a 1099, whether it's an invalid Social Security number or whatever, it's going to mark it in red. That's going to make you fix it before you can go on. Okay. So your next step here is to verify all your income boxes. Now, keep in mind, like I said before, if it's non-employee, your minimum is 600. So I normally would not have even had to put out this 1099, but I left the 600 out as my minimum. But look at this one. This one says it's rent. Make sure it really is rent. And I just had somebody let me know that the vocals are fading in and out. So if you have any problems, let me know again. Okay, I just moved my microphone a little bit. So now your next step after that was there any withholding? Most of us, the answer is no. Verify your filing state is correct. And then you go your next step. Now, this is where you actually have to make some decisions. So yes, at this point, Atrix is going to try to sell you something, okay? Go ahead and click on Next. And here's where it's saying, okay, this is the complete service. Now, I only have two, and they charge a bare minimum of $24.95. But what this complete service does is for your $1.95, it prints them, mails them, e-files them. It does everything. So you may want to, at least look at this to see, is it worth it for you to go ahead and, have Atrix do the whole thing for you. So they're stuffing your envelopes, they're mailing them, and they're doing your federal and state e-filing for you. Take a look at the pricing, see if it's worth it. If you don't want to do that, you just come down here to Other Options, and you tell the system, well, what do I want to print? Well, I want to print my recipient 1099s. Do I want to file these? Maybe I want to print them and I want to stuff them in the envelopes, okay? But do I want to e-file them? So once again, look at the pricing. You can e-file them with the government. I'm going to go ahead and take these out. And I'm just going to tell the system, yeah, I want to print the federal 1099s and 96s and the states. Okay, so I'm printing everything, including my payer copies. So we go ahead and we hit Next. All right, once again, hey, why don't you let us do it is what this is saying. And if you want to go, if you want to change your mind, you just click on Yes, I'd like to go ahead and do the complete service. Otherwise, you do Next. Do you want a divider sheet? Nah. So we're going to go ahead and hit Next. And now it's going to tell you what it's printing. Okay? So I'm going to hit Next. So this is what it's going to look like when you go to print. Now, keep an eye on the screen. The top will tell you what it's doing. Federal 1099 miscellaneous. Now, it tells you click Print Final, then Next Step. So if I click print final, it's going to say to me, please insert the official red 1099 federal paper you purchased now. It's a little different than our W-2s. For you W-2 people, we actually do not have to print on the red for W-2s, but we still have to for 1099s. So now it's asking you to print that, put that red paper in for your federal form, okay? So we're going to go ahead and click OK, and then it wants to print it. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK to print. So it just printed that copy. Now I'm going to do my next step. Now here's my federal 1096. Once again, print final. I'm going to click print final, and it tells me to put the red paper in. So we're going to go ahead and click OK, and once again, it will print it out to my printer. It has to be that red form. Now I'm going to do my next step. Now here's my California. In our case, it would be Missouri, but this is the state copy. And what you'll see, I've got, this guy here and this guy here, and then I don't have any others. These are, blank type of total pages. So I'm going to print final, and it's saying, please insert the 4-part perforated 1099 paper. So it's very kind to us, telling us exactly what it wants us to do. So go ahead and do your next. And then here's your recipient. These are the ones that you're going to send to the vendor. Now notice it's the same vendor in each one. So this goes to your 1099 vendor. Print final. Please insert your 4-part. Click OK. And we go ahead and print it. Then we hit next step. Now, it's telling us you have to complete what is in red. So I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to put my name in there and my title. And now it's happy, so I can say print final. So this is my 1096. And this form should be printed on plain paper, not 4-part perforated W-2 paper or 1099 paper. So we're going to click OK. It's allowing us to double check it. We could go back, double check. I don't need to. Once again, I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to agree that this is my final copy, and I'm going to hit OK. Now I can do my next step. This is the instruction page that you can actually send to your vendors, because most often those 4-part paper that we purchased doesn't have the instruction page on the back. So I'm going to do my print final, go ahead and print it, and then do next step. And this is your payer, so this is your copy. So this will have, 1, 2, however many 1099 vendors you've got, it'll have all those in there. So now we're going to do print final. We go ahead and print it, and then you do your next step. Now it's telling you that everything's been printed. Now, if you want to, you can go back and you can reprint. You can tell it, I do want to e-file it. I want to start completely over. I need to do some corrections. Or I can just say, close. I'm done. Once you're done, the system thinks, okay, you are done. Okay, you've printed them, you're ready, you're done. So once I do that, if I was to go back in there now, I would go to a history, and then if I accepted it, I may not, I think I needed to change the year, but it should, let's continue expired. See how it's got the history? So now I can actually come back in and do edits if I need to do an edit, and then reprint, etc. So once you're completely done, it goes into a history file. So that is very different than what you're used to doing with the 1099s as far as the printing. Is there more steps? Not yes and no. I mean, I think in previous years we were just used to putting the form in and you print. You put the form in, you print. You put the form in, you print. But we also put the form in print and struggled for alignment, and then struggled for alignment again and again. Well, now this is made so it's supposed to align properly, and we shouldn't have to struggle like we have in the past years getting it to align. So it's new, it's different. Check out the dollar amount if you want the Atrix to file everything for you. We've had several clients do that, and it's been, you know, good for them. A lot of people have told me that the cost of the forms and their labor, it really made sense for them. We do have a question here. If you start now for 2014, will it capture the entire vendor payment history for the year, or do you have to edit the amounts on the 1099s? The answer is, you know, go back, set those vendors as 1099 vendors, and then do this report, the payment history report that we had made up at the beginning. And what it'll do is it'll show you the total amounts that you paid to that vendor for this year. Then you go to your vendor maintenance and you go to the vendor history and you just change it. Because keep in mind, we have a lot of people that, you know, oh, this guy was supposed to be a 1099 vendor, I didn't realize it. So you just come in here and you say, okay, for this year, I paid them $3,500. And sometimes you may have to adjust that. So yes, you can go ahead and start any time in the year. Can we still buy the forms through Sage? Absolutely. Be careful though, because we actually had Sage sell one of our clients the wrong W-2 forms, and they did make it right. But they are fully aware of the Atrix, and you tell them that you are printing them through Atrix, that that you are in version 4.5, 2013 or 2014. All of the stuff is going to go through Atrix this year. Or you can also contact your normal vendor if you use like a Safeguard or Deluxe. You can go ahead and use them. Keep in mind you still need the red forms for the Fed. I believe you still need the black, ones with the black forms for the state, but the one that goes to the recipient is a 4-up perforated blank form. So you can tell them that that is a 4-up perforated blank form. Okay, so that is all the information that I have for today. If you have any other questions, please feel free to contact me. Like I said, this is a little scary because it's a little bit different, but I think once we get used to it, we'll all love it. So if you have any questions, give us a call. Otherwise, we're here for you. And this, by the way, once again, a user called in and said, hey, I would love to do a Tech Tuesday on this. So if you have any ideas, call in, email in. We'd love to hear some ideas. And we will be doing an inventory, year-end inventory Tech Tuesday, probably coming up here real soon. All right, we will talk to you soon. You all have a great day. Hope you enjoyed the Tech Tuesday, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.